And if you are working with a full fascial line, it is takes some time. So again, the communication with your client about what you're doing is so important. Because people have an expectation when they come for massage, and just want them to have those expectations met. And so, does this remind you of your full compression unit? Yeah.
And you're starting with compression to warm up the tissue, to take advantage of that thixotrophic effect. And like you've been doing all along, you're also assessing. So right from the beginning, you're assessing what's going on through this.
And had this been an actual session with Taylor, I would have started with a hot pack on Taylor's lower back and probably hamstrings too, because it just feels good and it helps, I think.
So could you use like one of the like body heating pads just on top of the back to start?
Yeah,
for the first
absolutely.
15, 20 minutes?
Absolutely. Sure. In fact, in the clinic where I work, we often use the microwavable hot packs also, in addition to hydrocollator packs, because we made the mistake of buying inexpensive hydrocollator packs, and I had the pleasure of sticking my finger through 2 of them. And what's inside, you do not want to touch, let me tell you.
It's a creepy gray clay. It's disgusting. And if they break and get into your whole heating unit,
Yes.
that's really gross too.
So gross. So if you're going to buy some, spend some money on those. Okay, so what is number 2?
With fingertips of both hands, check the pressure between the heads of the leadless while pulling away from each other.
Okay.
Can we undrape for this to see better?
Of course.
And if you are not following along here, we're on the posterior fascial line prone. So the third one down, third technique down area. So you can do MFR to some extent through sheets or through clothes. We're gonna undrape so that you can see the work better. If you do MFR through sheets or clothes, you're gonna wanna do it in a way where the sheets or the clothes don't stop the unwinding. So you can gather a little extra sheet so that when you start stretching, you still have room to stretch the tissue. So sometimes the MFR might look like compression, but like we practiced it in class the other day. The difference is really that with the MFR, you're taking that tissue to a stretch point and you're staying at that stretch point. And as the tissue gives, you keep taking the slack away. So sometimes it is so slow that it looks like you're just pressing down, but you're really taking that tissue out into a stretch and facilitating an unwinding.
And it's slower.
And while each individual, MFR stretch seems really slow, it is so effective that you don't need to go repeat what you did. So nice thing is once you've facilitated the release in that area, you don't need to come back and do it again. Now, of course, there's fascia at different levels. So there might still be like deeper tissues in that area that are still bound together. But as far as what you did, that area is good.
And you might hold this for 2 to 5 minutes, just depending on the stretch you're getting. And it may release more quickly. So just in the interest of time, we'll move on. So what is next?
Cross-hand stretch. One hand on ischial tuberosity
Mhm.
and one on medial hamstring.
Okay.
2 to 5 minutes.
So this is the cross hand.
I have a question. What is the difference in the release this way versus the handheld fascia machines or rollers?
Oh, the Fascia Blaster or
Yeah.
something.
Theragun? Every time?
So what is the difference in the release when you do it by hand or if you use the machines like the Fascia Blaster or rollers?
I have not used a Fascia Blaster myself. I believe that unless the tissue was really warmed up, that that type of machine might actually do more harm than good. But I honestly have not explored them. Have you?
I think they can act a little bit more like petrissage. So they can kind of warm up the area and kind of break through things more than really unwind the tissue. But a foam roller, if you practice it like MFR, you could do the same type of release. But a lot of people end up just kind of like either rolling through the tissue like petrissage or staying on one spot like prolonged ischemic compression. And there's nothing wrong with those approaches, but most people don't apply it in an MFR kind of a way. Yeah, but you could.
Because people do a lot of foam rolling. They really do.
Yeah, because I just tried it initially just for this the stretch.
Mm-hmm.
But I had no idea what I was actually doing when I started.
And did you find it effective?
I found that like after I worked out, it did help. Like
Mhm.
I wasn't in as much pain later.
Oh,
after
good.
the exercise.
Good.
You might have noticed Jill is adjusting her body mechanics and her arms and kind of moving even as it unwinds. So even though the
Mhm.
change is subtle, you're having to move with that change.
And I know now I'm going to do the lateral hamstring, right?
Yes.
And This you actually could do across the table, I think, depending on how tall you are and how low your table is.
And this cross-handed stretch is sort of like classic MFR position, but the most important thing is that you're engaging the tissue, taking it to a stretch, adding a little bit of an angle or a twist rather than trying to sort of fight on a straight line, and then continue to follow that unwinding. That effect is more important than if your arms are crossed. So practice different body mechanics. You know, you might want to put an elbow on the ischial tuberosity and a hand on the hamstrings. And like Jill said, you might also want to try standing across the table. So for some people, this cross-handed technique, especially with this one where it's a bit of a stretch, is too much for their pecs or their body. So just adjust your body mechanics if you need to. Yep.
So it's stretching with a twist and pressure, right? There you're adding pressure.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
And so this is another way to do it. And for myself, this is actually a lot more comfortable.
And notice how Jill is resting her hand on her own body. I find that I can relax a lot more for many uses of my elbows and forearms when I rest myself on myself. I find it calming and relaxing. So whatever keeps you more relaxed in the technique, and it can actually add to your sensitivity to just kind of chill out. And Keisha asked a great question about pressure. With this stretch, we're engaging in where the tight pattern of fascia is. And, you know, we know that the hamstrings are attaching into that ischial tuberosity, right? So we're really engaging with the fascia of the hamstrings. And that's the depth that we're engaging at for this one. So, you know, some people kind of practice all of their MFR on this like superficial skin level. And a lot of what we're going to do is going to go deeper than that. So you're not just staying on the superficial MFR. See, Jill has adjusted where that release is up on the ischial tuberosity, and see where her support hand is on her own elbow. So you're really shifting as it goes. And you want to keep it as easy on yourself as you can. Make whatever adjustments in your body mechanics you need to make it easy. I know one massage therapist says she loves this technique and prolonged ischemic compression because you're getting paid really well just to rest. So you want to find a position where you're resting and just relax into it.
Thanks for showing us another way, because I thought the cross-handed thing, I could see myself start shaking in that.
Yeah, it could be a lot of upper arm strength and pecs, and yeah, you don't need to fight it.
Well, and it's, yeah, for a long time, quite frankly, I don't find it super comfortable either. Okay. So what are we doing next? Okay.
Oh, I missed some stuff, but you did compression all the way down, and then you just started on the legs.
I did, because that's what our demo is today. Yes.
Is that how you would do it?
I actually might start a little closer to the foot, but
Okay. Yeah. It's good to know different ways.
Yeah, this superficial back line, that fascia of the Achilles tendon wraps all the way around to the plantar fascia under the foot. And so in that way, it also connects like all the way around to the front line. So like, for example, you'd even consider this line if somebody has plantar fasciitis.
And they would love you for it. Really, truly. And see, if you have longer arms, sometimes I believe the cross handed MFR might work really well for you. I love this MFR stretch right here. And very often what I will do is ask the client then to take a deep breath way down into their belly, which actually kind of helps a little bit. Just give a little stretch. So Sarah, can you take a deep
You're
breath
on
and
the
hold, please?
cross-handed stretch on better center line, one hand on sacrum.
I am, but I'm not doing the cross.
You're just, when you're doing that, you're making sure you're on same.
I'm doing the center line.
Yeah,
Yeah,
not
right.
not if we're gonna do like.
Well,
one-
I am actually pulling where this hand is and slightly angled. The pressure is angled a little bit.
So I have a question about this.
So here's the traditional one. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Anna.
So I know that one of our instructors that when you're doing the butterfly, and warming the tissues and then starting to slightly go deeper and deeper with it, that one of the instructors said really avoid pushing down the central part of it, but to always go kind of like really to the side, because it feels good when the person's on the table, but when they stand up, then they can have some back issues. And I actually had that happen to me. So I just wondered how that was in relation. Maybe you're not pushing the same way.
I don't know what you mean. Do you, Stefan?
Nope.
I am not like, the pressure is not.
Not totally.
Yeah, and on the sacrum, same thing. It's not this. It's
And sometimes out of context, we don't really know if you're talking about what someone else said,
right.
what context they were speaking to you about that. So I'm not sure.
Yeah, it was just doing the butterfly stroke and like when you're pushing down, they said to make sure that it's really to the sides, because if you go that center line when you're pushing down, it feels good, but when you get up.
And you're talking about on the spine itself, correct?
Yeah, I think so. Just right down the middle. But to the
Okay.
lateral.
To stay on the ESGs.
I don't, again, you're bringing up someone else's comment, so we really don't know the context of what they were saying, but I will tell you that when you learn the butterfly stroke, you were beginners without good palpation skills or assessment skills. So some of these techniques vary in how you can apply them with more advanced skills. So, there's some things that aren't safe to do if you don't really know like the full picture of what's going on for the person. But then with more skills, you can do certain things. But again, that's just a general comment, not specific to what they were saying.
Right. And then I believe the next thing is doing the same on each side.
See how there's kind of a pink hand mark where Jill was? That's a good sign that the MFR stretch was kind of working. If you even do like one stretch, there'll often be evidence that you were there as opposed to like kind of a warming friction or petrissage where you have to really keep doing it, keep doing it.
Slowly.
But keep in mind that while this fascia connects all the way up and down, just like when you're doing your, work with the ESGs, that there can be certain segments that are tighter than others. So that's part of with your warm up, with your compressions, you're assessing still what needs it more than others. So Jill, if she applied the same technique to 10 different people, it would be a little different for every person. So the exact hand placement and where she's going to apply these stretches varies a little bit. And sometimes you'll come closer together, kind of repeat in a smaller area, and sometimes you can have a bigger stretch. But almost everybody, that kind of stretch taking the sacrum inferiorly is really good. And people need their fascia lengthened in that low back area. Yeah, Oksana, and then Krish.
What mean central line? It means on the spine side?
Yes.
The back of it?
Yeah,
First,
right,
yeah?
center, the spine, yes.
And no pressure, just fluid.
I'm not going down so much as,
Krish.
Which mechanoreceptors are we targeting here?
Really all of the proprioceptors and all of the receptors in the fascia. So, this will work with your Golgi tendon organs and your muscle spindles and all your stretch receptors. Traditionally, people don't tend to talk about the fact that there's mechanoreceptors within the fascia, and they usually focus on that more specifically to like musculotendinous junctions and so forth. But our more modern fascia research indicates that it's also in the fascia. So we're kind of addressing all the layers, right? Because Jill's obviously on the muscle tissue as well, and all the fascia that's infusing it and the connections.
Potassium and calcium and sodium and whatnot.
The chemical are, it definitely is working with all the matrix of, all the fascial connections. We're going to study the muscles this week, right? But
Yeah.
for them to fire well, we do need all of those chemicals, going across the membranes and being able to be released. And those, I often hear physiology talked about as like a liquid chemistry. So we really need this like fluid environment for the chemistry processes to work well. And things can get bound up. So increasing our mobility can help with that.
So we can crisscross the spine if we're doing that, like one side on this and stretch like that.
You can crisscross too, yeah.
We have your one hand down at the sacrum. The flop, you were pulling your hands opposite directions. It just looks so subtle from over here
it is subtle.
when your hands were further apart.
It is, because Anna, sometimes the pressure, is, you can have it on either side of your palm. Pressure is heavier on one side than the other. So it does look very subtle. That's why why you need to really communicate with your clients about what you're doing.
And I read something about equal pressure, how do you like show that balance?
I'm sorry?
I read something about distributing the pressure equally. How do you kind of like feel that out?
You will be able to do it.
Yeah, so
it-
just as you practice, you'll kind of know.
You will definitely know, but kind of one of the subtlety points about this is that what's happening to the fascia on your right hand and your left hand can be different. So you're going to respond to how it's unwinding. So sometimes there'll be like a pause on one side and you just keep steady while the other one is like unwinding, unwinding. So you're adjusting according to those things.
But like, is the pressure still kind of like equal on both sides? Even though one may be moving faster, it's like balancing.
It's kind of more like equity than equality.
Okay.
Because each side is getting what it needs,
Okay.
but each side is likely different. So you're meeting the resistance and the pressure of what that side needs, and you're meeting the pressure and resistance of what this side needs. And they don't always need the exact same thing, but you're using your spidey senses on both.
Okay.
Yeah.
You kind of learn.
Yeah, yeah, it's more of a feeling state. Yeah, yeah, you'll totally get it. And then we're gonna take this one when Jill's ready with that. We're gonna take this one all the way up to the fascia of the neck. And this superficial line goes all the way up and over the head. If the client is okay, of course, with you touching their hair, otherwise you can go just to the neck of the hairline. But we're showing you this is one continuous line. But again, you see how slow this work is. And so one thing you can do too is really mix in other techniques so that if a client kind of wants the feeling of a more traditional massage, they still get that feeling. And then you can still get the effect of these MFR techniques. So you don't have to do all these techniques in a row. You can do like all the yummy stuff you do on the legs and just include MFR, and same as the back, right? Yeah, yeah, you can totally use your Swedish, your pin and stretch, all the good stuff. The one sort of caveat or thing you need to keep in mind, of course, though, is you don't want slippery skin with MFR. So you kind of strategize around that. Are you going to do your MFR before you get things slippery? Or I will often use lotion because I can slide it first, but then it sinks in. And you can even go so far as to wipe the lotion off if you did your Swedishy techniques first, or put a tissue on both hands so that you stick to the tissue. I find a lot of clients want it to feel more like a massage, and that the MFR is very effective, but that a lot of people don't necessarily want to just like sit around like, for 30 minutes and all you did this. They might want their money back.
Well, yeah, that's why you have to talk to them a whole lot.
So would you recommend doing the myofascial in the beginning? Like we incorporate the technique?
A lot of people would say do it at the beginning because of the whole slippery factor. But honestly, I find it very important to meet the psychological needs of the client. And so I do all the yummy stuff first to know that we are deeply rooted in this massage. And then I will incorporate these very powerful releases. That is very effective. And then at that point, they'll be like, whoa, that feels amazing. Right. But if you spend the first half an hour with this, they'll be like, what are you wasting my time for?
It's like, I thought I was coming for massage.
Well, also the tissues are going to be a lot more warmed up.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
And honestly, and this is ways in the future, but I do this extensively with cups. Do the MFR with cups.
We've already got it on the schedule though. It's
We
not that far
do.
away.
No, it's not that far away.
I just got one.
Massage cups.
Now, I've seen that happen when blood was coming out.
Nah,
Yeah,
no
there
blood.
would be no blood.
There will be no
I know,
blood.
but just, the blood was coming out and then it coagulated. And they took off the cups.
Yeah.
Just scraped off.
We're
the-
not bleeding.
I think
We're
that's
not
called
bleeding anyone.
Harami. It's called Harami. It's a certain technique used in,
Bleaching or something?
no, no, I think it's called Harami.
I seen that and I was like, what?
There will be no blood.
Yeah, there will be no blood here. Thank you.
Ukraine.
And you said that you have done cupping? Okay. Yes, yeah, and they're great, aren't they?
So notice Jill is doing a variety of hand positions. You know, you could even sit down for this technique. And then obviously we want the stretch to go up and over, obviously not pushing the client's head down.
Right.
You ever stretched your ears?
Yeah, there's all kind of wonderful fascial connections with the ears.
Yep.
A little
You like
tip
that
on
with
ear
the tissue or
stretching.
something?
What's that?
Like that using tissue?
No,
No.
just this whole part of the ear is fine, you know.
And behind
And you can,
the ear
you can pull it
also.
like out on an angle like this.
Yep.
And slowly in each direction is yummy for the fascia.
And
More like not out this way, but out this way.
Where do the ear meridians go in the feet?
Well, there are not so much meridians in the ears as like 100 acupressure points
Wow.
and wonderful connections. Yeah.
and in an intraoral massage course,
People push inside your mouth.
well, that is part of it, yes. However, the beginning of getting someone ready for that is loosening the fascia of the head and the ears and the face and everything. And it involves like getting your fingers into the hair and basically twisting the hair. Does it feel good? It's not so bad. Do you mind if I try, Taylor? Sure.
You know, people have always held a lot of tension in our faces, but with all this mask wearing, we're
okay?
having even more tension in our faces.
It feels, see,
so.
Taylor's loving it.
I love that feeling.
So that ear work and the hair work actually addresses some of that fascia that's all bound up from mask wearing.
Yeah.
So when you're doing the hair, are you grabbing the hair?
I'm right at the roots of the hair, yes.
Wow. What if they don't got hair? You just pushing the skin.
Pretty much, that's what you have to do.
That's what you want anyway, right? You want the fascia. The
Yeah.
hair is just a hold.
It just makes life a little easier for you because,
Yeah. Yeah, for headaches. Yeah.
right,
So Jill, when you're done with that, could you
Okay.
show integrating the feet part of the line a little bit?
absolutely.
All right, so your notes don't say this, but as Jill said, and we talked about this fascia going into the plantar fascia of the feet too. So this Achilles tendon, you can just take that work right into the foot.
Taylor, I'm gonna remove the bolster. So, for the foot, you know, again, you would warm up with some compressions.
And while Jill is doing that, notice that there is a marked difference between the side she worked more and the side she worked less. So there can be some really good releases with this.
And if you work with people who have foot issues, this really helps them quite a bit. But again, you want to really warm up the tissue, and I did not do much of that. The Achilles tendon can get really tight on people. I'm sorry.
What do you do?
Yes, I am working with the fascia to, yes, yep. Because the pressure in my hand is kind of going that way right now.
So just keep in mind, right, because this is new, working with the anatomy trains in this way, that these connections mean that anytime something is upstream or downstream or in the middle, that the other parts of the line might be tight. So, it's just a useful strategy. Taylor's had a stiff neck and some head issues with that working all the way down to the feet and the whole anatomy train everywhere in between can really help with that. So we're going to do the front line today too. Are there any questions about the back line before we wrap up the back line?
The hamstrings that you started out with.
Sure. I'm going to put this back, Taylor. So with the hamstrings, initially, one hand was on the ischial tuberosity and one was on the medial.
Is there something more detailed you were doing before that though? I think I had been going in and out doing paper stuff for this.
You saw this part though, right? And this part? And the calf, did you see?
Maybe it was the calf. Did you start there? Yeah, okay, that's fair.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's okay. The number one on your instructions, talk, about putting your fingertips between the heads. And
That part, are you just like, there's a part, or you? Oh, okay.
but a little like this, too.
Yep. Fine.
That's perfect.
So just keep in mind, right, that whenever it looks like she's just doing compression, it's always taking the MFR stretch, holding it and putting a little twist and keep unwinding it. So like tug of war, you never let the other side have it. You just keep pulling it, right? So you got to keep that tension on. I'm going to stop between front and back line.
Thanks, Taylor.
In the reading about when you are actually doing the MFR,
Can you flip them?
I'm sorry.
Can you flip them?